Welcome to Steadfast, a pro-life podcast where we talk about how the pro-life movement is evolving and how you can participate. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge of science, philosophy, politics, and theology so that you can go out and lovingly change the world, even if that's just one heart at a time. Our hope is that you'll feel comfortable meeting anyone wherever they are at in this moment, confronting their fears and hurt with love and compassion. I'm your host, Sammie Carroll, Education Coordinator at Life Choices Women's Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and our prayer is that this podcast inspires you. Welcome to Steadfast. What is up, everybody? Today on Steadfast, we are talking to Father Perera about healing ministry, particularly healing for the post-abortive woman. We also dive into the role of men in all of this, because I don't know if you've heard the whole no uterus, no opinion, but we dive right into that. I just want to say a big thank you to Father Perera for coming in, talking to us. He actually came to my house for this. This was our first episode that we recorded. So I do want to apologize in advance for the little bit of wonkiness that's the audio in this episode. But I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and just a big shout out and thank you to Father Kurt. Hello, Father Kurt.
Hey, Sammie. How are you doing?
I'm great. Welcome to Steadfast Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Father Perera. I'm a Catholic priest, and I've been a Catholic priest for 9 years now. And before that, at the very beginning, I was stationed at, or I was assigned rather, it's not a station, but I was assigned to as a parochial vicar, which is like an associate pastor of the cathedral, as well as a part-time high school chaplain at Borgate Catholic. And I did that for about 4 years. And then the past 5 years, I've been a full-time chaplain at Notre Dame Prep in Scottsdale, in residence at Our Lady of Joy. And just this past summer, I was recently appointed Director of Vocations for the Diocese of Phoenix, formator at the Nazareth House, and as of this past Monday, interim parochial administrator of a parish.
So you're very busy.
Well, God has given me a lot of things, but I'm sure He gives me a time, right? So.
Oh yeah, I think that, it's been wonderful knowing you over the past. We figured this out. It's taken us a little bit of time, but we figured out maybe 4 or 5 years of knowing each other. But I'm glad that the diocese is recognizing your gift of reaching people, especially young people, as far as vocations go. So I'm excited for your new role.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Working with young people as they journey through life and discover what God is calling them to do is always exciting.
Yeah.
So.
Well, tell us about your involvement in the pro-life movement.
So, the very earliest memories of working in the pro-life movement occurred when I was, I would say, in high school. I think I was maybe a freshman or maybe an 8th grader, and I was involved with the Legion of Mary at the time. And so one of the fundraisers that we decided to do was to help
Is it Legion of Mary Maximilian Kolbe's?
No, it's not, but it's certainly Maximilian Kolbe was one of the kind of the inspiring saints that helped form it. But it was actually through Frank Duff, and he was a layman in Ireland who helped form it, and it was like to be out in the parishes and for people to go spread the word of God and have, it was kind of revolving around the standard of Mary and kind of that. Yeah, but anyway, so Legion of Mary too was also a very pro-life group, and so I remember working with my pastor at the time, and I was like the president or the secretary of the Junior Legion of Mary at my parish, and he was like, I think it's important for us to do an outreach or a fundraiser for a pregnancy center, and so we did. We sold like little rubber wristbands at the parish. At the time when those Live Strong wristbands were famous, Mm-hmm. So this one had a little blue one that said pro-life on it, and so people were buying that. And so that was my earliest kind of memories of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you grew up in Ahwatukee.
Yes.
Right? Cool. That's also where I grew up, so it's crazy that we haven't met except for the past, 4 or 5 years, or since. I don't know how to say that. I'll edit that out. Well, what about healing ministry? You know, when I was talking to some people about who should I talk to about healing ministry, and instantly I got text back, Father Kurt Perera.
Yeah, so when I was a seminarian, I was assigned 1 year. All the seminarians are assigned to to either hospitals or doing kind of hospital ministry. But for that year, for some reason, I was not assigned to a hospital, but I was instead assigned to a Bethesda. It was called Bethesda Healing Ministry, and it was a healing ministry for post-abortive women. And they only choose 2 seminarians from each class to participate in something like this. And I was one of the seminarians out of the 2 that were chosen.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so it was out in Columbus, Ohio, and it was actually started co-founded by Bishop Olmsted at the time. That he worked with a lay woman who was a counselor and a psychiatrist, and so she just really felt a call to combine this aspect of prayerful approach to healing, and also all the information that medical science provides too, in terms of psychology and counseling, to kind of bridge that. So she worked under Bishop Olmsted's guidance and helped form Bethesda Healing Ministry at Columbus, Ohio. And that's how I got in touch with it. And then meanwhile, I came back to Phoenix one summer, and I was out at a parish, and one of the ladies approached me and said, I really want to work with healing ministry for post-abortive women. Do you know any program out there that could be helpful and something that we could bring to Phoenix? And I said, yes. I just came from a year of working at Bethesda Healing Ministry, and it was just a beautiful experience of that. And so we were able to bring that to a version of it to Phoenix. Now it's called an Experience of Hope. And it's beautiful because it's this one-on-one counseling and prayerful approach to, I shouldn't say counseling, but it's because it's not necessarily that, but it's basically encountering women who have had an abortion and who want to seek healing from a faith perspective, and also from an experience of background of psychological kind of healing.
That's awesome. I haven't actually heard of that one. Everyone always talks about Rachel's Vineyard, which is great. And we do have a retreat at St. Tim's in Mesa that they are doing, Rachel's Vineyards retreats and healing, and men and women can go to that one. But I hadn't heard of you said Experience for Hope?
An Experience of Hope, yeah.
Hope. Okay.
And the thing that's different approach than Rachel's Vineyard is Rachel's Vineyard tends to be a little bit more for a group approach. It's a retreats type setting. And we begin to notice that some women, especially since the wound of abortion is very deep sometimes, and they've been keeping it inside for so long, that sometimes to be able to, to say, hey, let's go on this big retreat where you're going to meet other women and men, and it's sometimes a little bit frightening, right? And talk about this experience can be really daunting. So what we do is we say, hey, the best way to describe it's a individualized Bible study in which another woman walks with you through this process of healing. So it's not really counseling, but it's deeply rooted in Scripture. And while it's not just limited to Catholics, it's open for anybody. We do dive into this experience of healing through the Catholic lens.
Awesome.
And through Scripture. Yeah.
Put a link to that in the show notes, because I think that's obviously a really good resource. There's obviously a lot of panic right now, especially just women being concerned about health and being worried that they're not going to have access to health care, but there's also a strange amount of apathy. So how do both of these things need to be addressed specifically through healing? Is there a wound on a deeper level in our hearts and in our culture that needs to be addressed, maybe even before winning over hearts for the pro-life movement?
No, that's an excellent question, and you're so right. There's definitely deep wounds in our hearts and in our culture today. And I think in order to address, as you so pointed out, this panic and also the sense of apathy, I think both of those need time and commitment. Because I think when the greater society and culture sees the time and the commitment that is really poured into this issue, and especially among pro-life people, that we are deeply committed and we want to walk with you, not just for the period of, to get, for the birth of the child, but throughout your entire life. I mean, this is something that's life-changing and life-altering. And so I believe we must address this as a church, because we are recognizing that there's the Catholics and people of faith are aborting at almost the same rate as, the culture, if not the same. And so we have to ask that question, how can this be? What are we doing? If we're supposed to be people of faith, why is it that the fact is, that the rate is still the same? And so we have to ask ourselves, where are the sermons or the homilies or the talks on love and empathy and respect for life despite the chaos that's around us? And how do we reach out to women and the men who are sitting in the pews every day at Mass, every Sunday, sitting there silent and feeling wounded and ashamed and trapped, especially because they believe they somehow won't be accepted or welcomed or loved if people knew their wounds? And I think that's a critical question that we need to ask for anybody who's of the faith, right? To say, it's okay. You will be accepted and loved, and that your life is not defined by what you have done,
I think that, that goes even beyond abortion. And I do think that my interactions with some non-denom churches, I just really admire that about them, that they are just they're so open, like, I've messed up and here are my mistakes and I'm going to walk through them, and they're very real with their wounds. And I feel like as Catholics, sometimes we don't want to show our wounds. Exactly,
because what we do is, I think, especially like the devil or the enemy tries to keep us in this rotating spiral of lies that say, what, you don't need this, or you don't need to show this, or you will be absolutely judged, and there's no way that you can come back from this. And so to really win over hearts, I think we need to learn how to talk to those who are wounded by abortion and to sit with that residue in their hearts. It's not easy to address, but I think it can be done, and it is the unspoken burden of at least 2 generations of Catholic men and women. And we find them in our families, in our churches, among our friends. And so, yes, this message definitely needs to be proclaimed today and embraced.
Speaking of the wounds, we know that a lot of people's concerns are focused on how the baby was conceived. Even when we are making these new abortion laws, there's an exception for rape. And to be fair to them, these people that are rallying, they really, in their minds, are just protecting the mother's heart and needs, which is a good thing. And as a pro-life people, we, of course, are also worried about the mothers, too, and we want to help them. But can you explain why an abortion is not a solution to a traumatic event like rape?
Excellent question, and very, very, very timely. As we know, abortion is never, ever a solution. It's a procedure that interrupts motherhood by destroying one life and wounding another forever. And we should not accept the lie that it is a solution to anything, because it is simply not a good enough response to a crime like rape. A response is required, but one that takes into account the fact that you have one criminal and 2 victims. And how are the victims to be treated? What do we know about the aftermath of abortion used in that situation? And we know because victims have told us that when a mother and a baby are not treated as something that should be acknowledged or recognized as even human, further wounding happens and women are damaged in an even deeper manner. And the evidence of a crime is destroyed. The truth is, an abortion, cannot go back in time and undo a rape. And I think it's important to first of all realize that a rape is a very traumatic and sinful and evil thing, and we should do everything we can to be with the woman, and also through legal means to make sure that a person who commits such a heinous crime like that is persecuted to the full extent of the law, right? And so it's recognizing both, but at the same time we know that if we allow the woman to have an abortion, that in the end it's going to be even more wounding, and it never can undo what's been done. So we have to deal in the reality that something terrible really happened, and we must walk with her and not turn our backs on her. And frankly, to be honest, like an abortion, and I know this might be very controversial to say, but it's really a sex abuser and sex trafficker's dream, because it's their get out of like jail free card. Because if we think that it is not used on women that have been sex trafficked or abused without their consent, we're not facing reality.
I've heard also, you don't try to heal trauma with trauma, because the reality is that abortion is still a traumatic event. You don't fight tragedy with tragedy or trauma with trauma. And I've also heard, we don't even give the death penalty to the rapist. So why would we give the death penalty to the innocent party? And I think that's important.
I think that's a super, that's a really good point. And I totally agree with that. We shouldn't add trauma on top of trauma already. Instead, I think this is a real good opportunity to show an outpouring of love and support and walking with those that are victimized.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording a little bit about the abortion pill, and they just make it, media especially, and of course all these companies and Planned Parenthood, they make it seem like it's no biggie. And Plan C's website actually says it's safer than Tylenol. But they do not talk about the trauma. I mean, they say you can take this up to 3 to 11 weeks. And at the 12-week mark, the baby's the size of about a strawberry or a fig. And they do not talk about how, you take this abortion pill and it still has to be flushed out.
Yeah.
It comes out of your body, and that's traumatic as well. They make it seem like, oh, it's no biggie. But there are stories of women who, of course, are traumatized when they go to the bathroom and they flush out a little baby, but also the amount of pain. And people seem like they really kind of, oh, it's fine. It's like your period cramping. But it's horribly painful and can be very traumatic. And I feel like people don't talk about that because they want to paint abortion as a beautiful solution. Maybe not beautiful, a positive solution.
I know, and the thing I really worry about this is when a woman does take these pills, they're doing it not under the supervision of any sort of medical professional, right? So they're doing it at home. We don't know if there's going to be complications, and you're right. People don't talk about the side effects of that pill and through a chemical abortion, and the pain that they still experience and the trauma that still happens when they do that.
Yeah. And you don't know how far along you are. You don't know, someone could be, just taken into their own hands. There's a lot of things. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've all heard this, especially on social media lately, that we as Christians just don't care about the mom, or we only care about birth. We're pro-birth, we're pro-birth, we're pro-baby. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that a lot of people know a lot about healing ministry. So can you explain what healing ministry is? You already kind of touched on it with the experience of hope, but how can it help these moms, especially as rape victims or the post-abortive woman?
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting question, because healing truly must begin in the heart, within the heart of the woman. And so, as a priest, often in, confession, sometimes that's the place where this is really breached open, and that's where the healing begins, right? Because oftentimes, they've been keeping this in their hearts for so long, and they've never had an opportunity or a chance to find a place where they can come and receive forgiveness, love, and mercy, in the throne of God, in the sacrament of confession. And so, but oftentimes confession, though, isn't the first place where sometimes a woman reveals her the wound of abortion. It can happen with a friend or a coworker. And so I would say that, you're talking about this question of where can you explain where healing ministry begins? Well, I believe if you're pro-life and if you want to help women wounded by abortion, it should be really good to recognize what you say in conversations about abortion. And so when pro-lifers kind of go out and they spout out and they say, oh, you know what, abortion is so horrible, I don't know how anyone could do such a thing. Like, that may be a true statement in a way, but it doesn't invite, it actually pushes them away to think, oh, I can now not reveal this to my friend because they may have just said something and they're going to think I'm a horrible person for doing it. And it doesn't invite that friend or that coworker to share the shame and the hurt that they may be carrying. And so anytime you're in a discussion about abortion, I think it's a really great Christian act to say something like, you know what, no one facing an unplanned pregnancy should walk alone. There's so much free help available these days for anyone who's endured an abortion procedure and is hurting because of that, and they can find help too. And that there is so much love and mercy and understanding in that. And to say, you know what, share your own personal testimony. There were times when in a homily I just basically said that we were all at a dinner table one time, and it was entirely with my family, and my aunt decided to read a letter that she had written to our senator or something about pro-life law. And she said, we need to let people know, and let women know and men know who are involved in abortion, that there's always options for choosing life, and that we will walk through them no matter what. And then so she's kind of reading her letter in front of my entire family, and then all of a sudden, somebody in my family stood up and was bawling. And then she revealed that she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and and she was young, and and so she and immediately everybody from my family just got up and gave her a hug.
Oh, I got goosebumps.
Yeah. So I mean, sharing those sort of stories, I think, can really help, and I think more stories needs to flood our podcasts, our social media, about acceptance and love and support for men and women who find themselves in a situation of unplanned pregnancy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think applying what you just said also to social media, because people have just been, especially after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, sometimes there's been boasting, and that's not going to invite anybody to talk to you.
No.
Especially if they have questions. If they're not going to want to come approach you if you're not showing love and mercy.
Exactly. And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. I think you're exactly right. And one of the things too, sometimes when showing and extending that friendship and that love and mercy, it's also nice to have something concrete that they can hold on to, right? And so I think it's important, if it's possible, to just be aware of the different groups that are available, maybe carrying a pamphlet or a card in your purse or in your car or something, just to hand out when that situation arises, and to say, hey, here's a concrete place, such as Life Choices, to be able to say, hey, go here, and I want to walk with you too, to know that they have somebody personal and that's that's going to be their friend throughout it all, I think is super important.
Yeah, I just typed in to Google, abortion, like healing ministry or healing from an abortion, and it what popped up was Abortion Changes You. I think it might be abortionchangesyou.com, and it's kind of a weird flow of a website, because it's you can't really tell what steps are supposed to go at first. But I think that as I navigated this website, the first step was to build a support system. Mm-hmm. So for the post-abortive woman, build a support system, and then from there you can start telling your story, ideally to your support system. Mm-hmm. And then exploring your emotions, identifying your losses, and then recognizing any unhealthy behaviors. And so they kind of try to make a map of how you can start healing from this, but it starts with that support system.
Yeah, exactly. I think it takes time, it takes friendship, and truly the grace of God, as well. And so and that's also recognizing that, especially for I'm a Catholic priest, like my support system, the foundation of it is on God, and so to realize that we are human beings made in His image and likeness, and we have a connection and relationship to Him that's that he never severs. You know, he's always constantly pursuing us, even when we feel like we're away from him. And so I think it's certainly a process, and understanding that healing will take time, and it's okay. You're not, you know, you don't have to have a quick fix on this. But I also know that the most successful stories of healing have come about because the woman or the man has realized that they need and they seek healing, and they're willing to do it, because it all starts with that, right?
Yeah.
Too. So
this website was talking about, sorry, we just took a little break because suddenly one of my children's puzzles started clucking at us. It's a chicken puzzle apparently, so we got very distracted. So bringing it back, this website is talking about how it's time to make another decision, to let go of your pain, but recognizing that you might never fully let go of the pain, but acknowledging that this is a part of your story. And I think ultimately giving it to God and letting him make something beautiful out of it. Those are my words. I don't think this website said, you know, let God make something beautiful out of your story or your pain. But I was looking at it, and on the top it says once you're ready to make that decision, put your initials in. And I just kind of looked at it, and then I was like, what is all this text? And it was like pages of people's initials. And there was one even from today. I think that there was like 8 this week. And I just like it. I had like a whoa moment. It was really beautiful. Finally, I just want to address the fact that men need healing from abortions as well. And you've touched on this. But let's put ourselves in the shoes of these fathers. Maybe he didn't want the abortion to happen, or maybe he didn't even know that she was pregnant until she wasn't. So how do we support these fathers? And how do we encourage men that they can and they should speak up about this? Because this is not just a woman's issue. Men should not be silent on this.
You are exactly right, because I think for so long, many people in the greater society and culture are fed that this is entirely a woman's issue. And so therefore it either excuses them to say, okay, well, I'm going to remain silent, or to be empowered and say, oh, you have no right to speak about it because this is my issue. And so men should not be silent, and so often I feel like they're shouted down in public by many like pro-abortion groups. But it is critical, I believe, in this time for men to stand up and act as leaders in this area. And so it was really eye-opening for me when I started to get involved in the healing ministry and even attending retreats, and I started to see men there. And I didn't realize the impact too at that point. I mean, now it makes sense, right? But a lot of these men, as you say, they didn't know that sometimes that she was even pregnant, or the decision was already made. And so their loss of like biological fatherhood was experienced. And so just as a woman who has had an abortion, kind of is her motherhood is stripped from her, or in that process, so it is with the man. And so one thing too that I find really helpful that men can do is the witness of them as fathers in society and in their households and in their families, to see men too praying in front of Planned Parenthood, that it's not just a woman out there, is a great thing for men to do. And the fact is to get it out there that actually there are many, many fathers who don't want abortion to happen, and they find out too late to even offer support. And so sometimes I think when men see other men standing outside of Planned Parenthood, they're open to talking about their own wounds as well, because they are so racked with pain and guilt, and they seem invisible. And they somehow feel like they have no rights, or they have no ability to speak out on this issue when they actually do.
Yeah, it's awful, because I just feel like it's completely unfair to them that they're shut down. And it's also a little ironic because according to the left, men can have babies anyway, but men can't have a voice. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, so when they say it's just a women's issue, it's like, well, you've just been debating this whole thing about what is a woman. Yeah. And so it's like, well, for the sake of this argument, yeah. I've heard also that the
the increase of vasectomies has just, skyrocketed since was it June 24th, they overturned, and people were like, well done, men, way to step up and, kind of do something to protect women. Like, they're not doing this to protect women. They're protecting themselves, and they are rejecting women and children.
Yeah, and even you will find that it's not 100%. No contraceptive method besides abstaining from the sexual act is completely 100%, proof. So oftentimes what this encourages is actually like less of you're making yourself less of a man, because what you're saying is that I can engage in this act of what we call love, but without any of the responsibilities that it could entail. And so you never know sometimes that even this could encourage more infidelity, because the man may think, oh well, I'm not going to get any woman pregnant, so I don't have to be faithful to my wife at home. It could encourage the sense of use, of I'm going to use this woman for physical pleasures rather than actually being committed. Because when a child is brought into a picture, it does change everything. But usually what it brings and should bring out is a more committed, more faithfulness, willingness to sacrifice, all these beautiful qualities and traits that really echo and resemble God in a way, that all these traits should be brought out in a man and in a woman when they're having a child.
This is actually the perfect segue, because next week on Steadfast, we will be talking to Jason Everett about how the sexual revolution and really this culture and how we view sex really impacts the view on abortion and the abortion culture too. So my final question for you, Father Kurt, is where have you seen God in the past few weeks, particularly in the pro-life movement?
I just recently came across this somebody I know really well, and they were on driving back from like a party or something like that, or just the afternoon luncheon, and they found a woman on the side of the road, like pregnant, like her due date was that day, and her car had overheated, and she was outside with her husband, and her husband was trying to fix the car, and she was standing out in 112 degree weather, and obviously she was very hot, and she just needed air conditioning, and so she was stopping cars, and I heard, and this person relating the story, that she had actually went up to this other car, and it was a woman driver, and the woman just kind of sped by, and then there was another guy that pulled up, and she was able to talk to him and said, I'm so sorry, my car broke down, my husband's trying to fix it, but right now this is really hot for me and my two little daughters that were with her, and so can you just get me to the nearest air conditioning? And this guy ended up taking her and waiting with her and her kids, and then helping the husband to be able to get his car fixed, and just to kind of set that in, and kind of walked with them, and even got them dinner, because the kids were complaining that they were that they were hungry, and they weren't a very well-to-do family, so they were kind of struggling making ends meet as well. And then at the end, she just basically told him, I saw the face of God. It was like as if God gave us and our family a kiss today. And so I think that was like a beautiful moment, because I think that's what it means to be pro-life, right? And he still keeps in touch with them today, finding out how her, how's her pregnancy going and everything like that. And so, I think that's a beautiful thing, like walking with them and providing for them, not just for that. And so, pro-life really truly means pro-life, and not just saying, okay, I'm gonna be there for a person that's, in the abortion clinics and try to make sure that they don't have an abortion, but also stopping for the pregnant lady on the road who was overheating in the 112-degree weather in Phoenix, Arizona. So that's how I just basically, saw the grace of God actually within this past week, and this just recently happened. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I hope that she names her child after him.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I know that you're very busy with all of the many things that you have to do, but I'm very thankful for you and thankful to have you in my life serving as a spiritual father, and we will be praying for you.
And thank you for your witness, Sammie. Thank you for inviting me, and for your example of motherhood and a woman of faith as well. So really glad to be here. Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode with Father Kurt, and if you would like to stay tuned to hear some outtakes of some weird chicken puzzle stuff, you just hang on tight. Yeah, I looking at this website even, there was a section of like, okay, maybe you've gone through these steps and you're trying to continue your journey of healing, but at a certain point you're going to have to let go of the pain and kind of acknowledge, I mean, you're never going to really fully let go of the pain, but acknowledge that this is part of your story.
Is that chickens in the background? Or is that might be one of your kids' toys?
Why did it just go off?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that was terrifying.
I thought, wait, for a minute there I was like, are there chickens in the background? Yeah.
I just had are my kids here? No? Did Mike get chickens? Okay, well that was terrifying. So glad that our puzzles are talking. That's a puzzle. That's a farm puzzle.
That's
okay. Bringing it back. The chicken really threw me. Okay.
This will be in the outtakes.
I know, I'm like, I definitely maybe might want to keep the chicken.
Thank you, bye.